gets on the plane and he sees the screens are everywhere. There's 1.2 million people in the air at any given time. He sits down and he has the middle seat between two guys. And the guy on his right tries to turn on the screen. Doesn't turn on. Guy to the left tries to turn on the screen. It doesn't turn on. And they call the flight attendant. And she pushes and she goes, I don't know what's wrong. Every other screen on this entire plane works. And these two screens are not working to me. And he was screen-free for the rest of the flight.
Welcome back to a very special episode of Inspiration for the Nation. Now, on Living L'chaim, the goal of this whole entire network is to help you live a life with more L'chaim, more enjoyment. And this very special episode, we sit down with Rabbi Shlomo Landau to discuss a topic that has been so impactful in the past few years, but honestly, it's been around since the beginning of time, and it's no secret that our eyes are our window to our soul. And in this episode, we give actual practical advice and reasons why what we see, how it impacts us, and how controlling ourselves and having self-control is going to give us a happier life. It is one of my favorite episodes. And I could, you know why? Because I walked away with saying, wow, this is so practical and it's proven, and there's some great, amazing stories in this episode. You will hear about the amazing movement called Vayimaen and how it's literally changing the Jewish world. This episode is in memory of Shimon David ben Yaakov Shlomo, as well as Miriam Sarah bas Yaakov Moshe. You will also hear about Hamaspik, how they've been in the 5 towns for over 2 years now, and if you need their help, they are there for you. This episode is also in memory of Tzivia bas Avram Tzvi, Rivka bas Nassan, and Krasel bas Nassan. They are no longer with us, but they will never be forgotten, and their neshamas shall have an aliyah. Now, here's my conversation with Rav Shlomo. I'm Yaakov Langer, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. Here we are with Rabbi Shlomo Landau, all the way from Lakewood.
Yep.
And I always feel bad when someone comes to the studio from Lakewood because it's not close, but especially when it's raining outside, it takes extra long. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm hopeful that amidst Hashem, it's going to be worth the drive.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So much pressure now. This has got to be a very good conversation. So I guess for people who don't really know who you are, can you give us a little background about you? And then we're going to jump right into the topic while we're here.
Sure. So I grew up in this place called Cleveland. Most people like in the tri-state area have never heard of it.
It's near like Detroit and Hawaii, right?
Correct.
I'm a classic Brooklyn guy.
It's right next to Hawaii.
Exactly.
Right next to Hawaii. Maybe some people know by the sports teams, but most people haven't heard of it. Spent a lot of time there, went to the Tel Yeshiva, then went to Eretz Yisrael, learned in Eretz Yisrael. And when I was learning in Brisk, some kind of random guy who I knew peripherally came over to me and said to me, there's this amazing organization called Ner LaElef, which kind of trains guys to go out there and make a difference, even, in the non-quote unquote yeshivish world. Mm-hmm. I think you're the right kind of guy for it. And I wasn't sure exactly what he was saying, but like they say, the rest is history. Eventually I got involved in Kiruv and outreach, moved back to the United States, and almost in 2000, before you were born.
Yeah.
And
I'm born in 1992.
Okay.
I'm 31.
Okay. And I almost immediately started working in a community called East Brunswick, New Jersey. Beautiful community, a lot of very special Jews, a lot of secular Jews or non-affiliated Jews, and started teaching Torah. And started talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the beautiful life that Torah and Yiddishkeit gives to a person. And people listened. So I continued talking. Baruch Hashem built a beautiful outreach community there called Torah Links. It's actually the Lakewood Yeshiva's outreach arm. Most people don't know that. I think it's one of the best kept secrets in Lakewood.
I did not know Lakewood has an outreach arm.
They do.
Did not know that.
Built a beautiful community together with another rabbi by the name of Rabbi David Gross, a very special person. And then early on also, I was kind of like a free agent in the mornings. So I was picked up by like one of the local, quote unquote, modern Orthodox high schools. And I started teaching, and it was like love at first sight. Did that for about 2 decades. I'm still very much in touch with many of my students, very comfortable with the teenagers. Sometimes I feel like maybe I'm a teenager. I don't know. We all want to stay young. And I did that for about 2 decades, built a gorgeous shul and a wonderful community, and made so many very special relationships. And then for like personal reasons, I pivoted about 2 years ago, and I moved to this tiny little town in Jersey called Lakewood, where there's more restaurants per capita than almost any place in the world, and a lot of Torah, and a lot of very special Jews. And at the same time, I transitioned into my role with Valueoma, which is a global care of organization. So took a lot of what I'd learned and trying to build it out in a more global way. Still teach high school twice a week in a high energy Masifta. I love it, 12th grade. Teach about Hashkafa and HaKadosh Baruch Hu and all kinds of things, real topics, real discussions. I also teach in a really special place called Vayimaen, which is a girls' high school, specialized girls' high school for girls who are figuring it out. And Hashem has blessed me, that I have the opportunity to speak in a lot of different places and meet a lot of different communities. So life's sweet, life's beautiful. Baruch Hashem.
That's really cool. Okay, so I want to get right into it and talk to you about this subject of, I'm going to label it as self-control, but you'll explain to me why it's so much more than that, and I guess how anyone could really tap into that to enhance their life. But first off, how would you describe the importance of just controlling what someone sees? And for someone who doesn't know what that even means, how would you describe that?
It's a great question. I would say that, we're constantly, our eyes work all the time. Besides when we're sleeping, they're literally in overdrive. And they're like, our eyes are connected to our brain. They're actually an extension of our brain, and they're constantly feeding information into our mind. And every single thing that we see in our entire life is somehow fed into this mega computer. I tell my students, imagine if for just 1 hour, I could connect some kind of like mega thumb drive to your brain stem, and it could download every single thought that flitted through your mind. How many pages do you think it would print? Thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands. So our mind constantly works, and our eyes, which is a part of our mind, they're constantly looking at everything in the world around them. And what we see impacts who we are. What we see impacts how we think, and what we see impacts, our avodas Hashem, the way that we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When a person has control over where they look, then the portals to their soul, which is their eyes, the portals to their mind, which is their eyes, they can live a much more refined life, a filtered life. I know the word filter is like not such a popular word, but in this context,
because you know what, I think by the root of it, people think filter, they think limitation, but any limitation in life, you think about it in the macro sense, it's actually helpful. Seatbelts are annoying, but at the end of the day, the people that wear the seatbelts, statistically, the amount of times it saves their lives is just, you can't even count that. So I guess filter in the sense that you're saying. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're saying good. And I think that our eyes, if we can filter what we're looking at in life and look at good things that are positive for us and things that are good for our emotional well-being, our spiritual well-being, then we fill ourselves with positive things. And then everything else that we do in our life is more positive, it's more elevated. In Yiddish, there's a word geheben. I don't know if people know what that means, but it just means like you're living your life on a higher plane. And I think that's one of the things that deep down we all strive for. We want to be better, and we want to live our lives in a deeper, more meaningful sense. There's that famous, idea or concept in psychology called logotherapy, which is that the greatest need that a human being has is meaning. And I think when we're in control of what comes into our minds, then we can play with that, and we can have a real connection to what's meaningful to us. But when we just let everything come in, and society is constantly bombarding us with many things which I don't think we even want to see.
Would you say that today's day in society is like the most exposure to everything and anything from the history of the world?
It's not even a question. Not even a question. I mean, just walk down the street, the amount of, open up your computer or your phone. You get more exposure in 5 minutes on a website than you probably got in a whole day. At least when I grew up, I'm before the internet, before, who was it? Who invented the internet? I think it was Al Gore, somebody like that said that he invented the internet. So I grew up before the internet. I got in a week, I was exposed to less things than I'm exposed to in a day. And in 5 minutes, I'm exposed to more things than I was exposed to literally.
I want to be direct because I think there's people listening, and like I just want to spell it out. When you say like things that we shouldn't be exposed to, like what are you referring to?
So I'm not only referring to kind of what I think ultimately we're going to arrive at, which is what we call shmiras einayim, or not looking at immodest things, or even just not looking at things that don't belong to us. I think in the bigger picture, it's just like there's a lot of things in this world that have absolutely nothing to do with us, and we don't need to pollute our minds and just fill ourselves up with so much random information. You know, the scroll mechanism that a lot of people have, or the scroll reaction, they just scroll endlessly on statuses or updates, et cetera, et cetera. 99.9% of that information, most people will tell you, is totally irrelevant, but you're filling up your mind with that. And imagine that you could somehow close your eyes, or you could filter what comes in or not. Then your mind would be open and free to really focus on the things, like we said before, that are meaningful to you, like your family, your personal growth, your connection to the Almighty, maybe even your goals and your aspirations. And how about happiness? Like, whoever thinks about that? Because we're so distracted by everything else that we think is going to make us happy. But imagine if we weren't distracted and we'd have a daily session. How happy am I? Or what does happiness even mean? I think we'd be living much more elevated lives, and I think we'd be happier in general.
It's such a good point you're saying. And I'm going to say two things. I'll be personal on two fronts. So obviously, I'm a human. I like anyone, you know, I struggle with, you know, if something's immodest, the natural sense for me is to be like, oh, you know, you don't even think about it. You want to, and then it's like, wait, the more I think about it, no, I don't want to look at something that's immodest and not for me. But even in the sense that you're saying of like, it's just not yours. I'll be open. There's a podcast out there that's competitor podcast. I may or may not have started it, but I literally was talking. We have a data analyst here, and I'm always trying to grow any Living L'Chaim show. This one, Inspiration for the Nation, Kosher Money, etc. Like I'm producing them, and I am always thinking like, how could I do better? And I was like, made a note. I was just comparing something I saw over there, and I said, okay. And my data analyst is like, what does that have to do with us? What is this like? What does this have to do with the mission statement of trying to inspire everyone in the world to just be a better person? Like, that has nothing to do. And he's right. It's so easy to be so consumed with others, what they're doing, and thinking how like that has nothing to do with you. And when he said that, shout out to Yoni, it was so natural for me to fall into that and like look to see what. But then I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, there's nothing to do with me. And then all of a sudden, I was like able to focus on like, okay, great. I'm interviewing you tonight, and a girl called me before that she's gonna come on the show. Like, okay, great. Now I can really focus on me and what matters to me.
100%. You know, you were like honest about what, you know, or I guess you could say on some level a little bit vulnerable. I'll be vulnerable back. Before I got involved in this, and I just want to say I'm not an expert. I'm just like a regular guy.
Okay, I like that.
I don't have any magic solutions. I'm not on a higher level than anyone else. I'm your typical, regular, run-in-the-middle, struggling guy. Baruch Hashem, I love life, and I think I'm a pretty happy person, but I struggle. That's just part of life. So before I got involved in like this mindset, I would come to a red light, and I would always look at the person in the car in the lane next to me. Like, why do I have to know who's in? It's not my business. I don't know if they want me to look at them. And from a spiritual perspective, it may not always be the right thing for me to look at them, but that was just like my gut. That was my normal reaction. What else do you do at a red light if not look at your phone? And anyways, you're looking at something else which you don't need to look at. And I think one of the things that being involved in this initiative and just being more sensitized has done to me is that, no, you don't always have to look all around. And just by naturally, I'm a really curious person. I like to say I'm an observant Jew. Mm-hmm. I'm always looking around. And this has helped me, like, you know, focus on your own life. Try to grow in your own life. You don't always have to look at every single thing that's around you. And I think what's so important about this is, like, when people think about Shmir Sayinayim, let's just come out there and speak about it. Most people, it's like immodest things, like billboards, shows, advertisements, pop-ups. For many, many people that I speak to, because people stop me all over the street and they're like, oh, you make those videos? And you're that guy? And I'll tell you something funny, we'll get back to this. I was in Evergreen in the shopping, you know, the grocery store, and a guy says to me, oh my gosh, you're the guy online. I'm like, no, I'm still shopping. so that's...
Well, it's just ironic that you became the guy online. Yeah, and like
it's very strange. I'm with you. Yeah, that is. It's like a catch-22. Like, right. On one hand, I'm speaking about just not looking at everything. But on the other hand, I'm producing a lot of content that people are looking at. But I hope that content helps them grow and focus on the areas in life that I think they really want to grow. Like, I don't think I do much sensational, you know, type of stuff. I think the stories I say are sensational, but that's okay. Life is sensational.
Right.
So yes, just getting back to what I was saying before, many people stop me and they're like, I wasn't that guy who was going to like websites I shouldn't be going to, or just watching things that are really, they pollute your mind and they corrupt your soul. I was just that guy that was just, I would look at everything and anything. And what being involved daily, just a little bit of inspiration every day, starting your day off, focusing has helped me do is it's freed me from that need. I don't, like you said before, I don't always have to take another look. I don't walk in the street personally with my eyes looking down. There are people that do that and they're big tzaddikim, et cetera, et cetera. I do look straight ahead, but I don't look a second time. And it makes me feel good. Like you feel like you're in control. And I think that's a really special feeling. None of us want to be just like that someone's leading us around. We want to be our own person. And one of the ways that we do that is by being careful of what we look at.
It's so interesting. I was literally thinking, because like as I raise my children, I think back to childhood. And something that I'm personally so grateful now, obviously childhood, you don't have to worry about putting food on the table. That's a big relaxation. But the fact that I was actually very appreciative now in my life is the fact that I'm the boss. I'm in control. So when you're younger, and it makes sense when you're a kid, you're a child, just naturally, that's how life works. So you're just not as in control. You get upset, you cry right away. You see something you're not supposed to say, okay, but you're just looking because that's just, and as you get older, you get smarter. You get the tools to really become a happier, better person. And so often the easy route is really to not work on yourself, and because it's easier, but that doesn't really actually bring joy. It brings a lot of pleasure to look at whatever you want, tons of pleasure, but that doesn't lead to happiness. I don't know if I should bring it up, but it's interesting. I just saw a clip from Ted Bundy, who was one of the biggest villains, rapists, murderers in America. And before he was killed in jail, in prison, they interviewed him, and he gave like a shout out to the world. And he said, the most commonality between all of the murderers here is that we all have a pornography addiction. And he said, it all starts from this. Again, he's an evil person, but I don't know why he was giving this message over, but it was a commonality between all of them. And there's like some form of like, again, that's very drastic of like how they ended up there. But the reality is they all had a lack of control in their life, and then they became the worst people ever. Again, I'm not saying that it's an automatic thing, but I'm saying for them in their shoes, it's just wild to think about that, like that lack of control.
So I think you bring up a very good point. Not so extreme as, watching things which are incredibly inappropriate or, God forbid, killing people. But I think that because this is a constant, we're always looking, and we're drawn, like you said before, we're human, we're drawn to a lot of different things. If we can master on some level, I don't think it's possible to have perfection in this area, unless you're not human or you're dead or sleeping. But it's such a common area, and it's there all the time. If you can get some level, some handle of self-control in this particular area, it spills over to a lot of other areas in your life. So let's say you were going to respond to your spouse and say something really smart but really wicked back. Maybe you'll bite your tongue because you're trained in self-control. Maybe you're in the office and someone does something that hurts your ego, and you are going to respond in a way that would be counterproductive. Maybe you'll bite your tongue. It helps our friendships. It helps our marriages. It helps people that overeat. I mean, self-control is such an amazing, amazing tool. And I think if a person, this is something, if you're not hungry, you're not going to eat. But if you're not hungry, you're going to look around. And if someone tries to show you something or someone tries to sell you something, which is really counterproductive, you may do it anyways. It doesn't have to do with hunger. And I think that that's why this is such an attractive thing to so many different people. Just the fact that they can ultimately gain some level of self-control. They can gain a handle on this. It has tremendous dividends. If it's okay, I just want to share with you something really fascinating. Sure. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, a young man approached me and he said that he has a family member that's undergoing a very serious health challenge, and that the family together decided that they want to upgrade their level of Shmir Sainaim, of being more careful what they look at and maybe even where they go. If I can make like a 3-minute video, like a kind of like a VIP Shmir Sainaim video, I didn't even know that I'm capable of making those type of things, for just the family, and that they can everyone could watch this and hopefully it could be inspiring. And I'm thinking to myself, I'll tell you something funny. You probably have a very similar perspective. I don't want it to be too good because I want to be able to use it for Vayimaen, which is a larger platform, but I want it to be meaningful. And I do want this guy to be healthy, et cetera, et cetera. Like, what should I say and what should I not say? You got me? Can you identify it?
Not as much, but I understand where you're coming from.
That was my Yetzer type.
Right.
That morning I'm davening. And at the end of brachas, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu not to bring us Laili de nisayin v'laili de bizayin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shouldn't bring us to nisayonis, to tests or challenges. And I remember as a kid already, this statement bothered me a lot. What do you mean Hashem shouldn't give us challenges? The Almighty shouldn't give us like challenges and tests and ordeals. With the Mesilas Yesharim, which is like, the playbook for healthy living and ethical living, the path of the just, he writes there and he says that the whole purpose of our life is to come out on top, to be challenged and to be victorious and successful. It's to be bin Isayin. It's to come out standing strong in the face of challenges and ordeals. So why do we pray to Hashem that we shouldn't, he shouldn't bring us nisyonis? And I knew the answer. Everyone says he shouldn't give us challenges that we can't handle. Okay, but he's God. He wouldn't do that anyways. And I realized something which to me was like a huge eye opener. And I shared it that day. And I'm really grateful to this family for actually giving me this opportunity to think a little bit deeper. We say the words, don't bring us loyli de nisayin. That means don't let the challenge hold us. We want to be able to hold the challenge. We know it's a challenge and we know we won't always be successful and many times we'll fall, but we want to at least feel like we're holding the challenge in our hand. So don't let the nisayin hold us. We don't want to be in the hands of the challenge. We want the challenge to be in our hands. I started being more careful when I got involved with this organization called Valueoma about 6 months ago. And I'm far from perfect. And I'm certainly not a tzaddik or a super righteous person. But I'm slowly starting to feel like I'm getting a handle on it. And it's not controlling me. I'm slowly starting to control it. That doesn't mean to say at all that it doesn't control me sometimes. But at least I'm thinking about it. I never would have thought about it perhaps 6 months ago.
Okay, so let's talk about Vayimaen. I think it's... And you'll explain to someone who doesn't know what it is, which is probably like the 3 people out there. But it's a very revolutionary thing happening in the world that I think it was very necessary. Honestly, it could have come even a few years ago, but I'm very happy that it's here now. So first off, someone who doesn't know what Vayimaen is, what is it?
Okay. So if it's okay with you, I want to kind of use myself to explain like my involvement with Vayimaen.
Sure. You're not the guy behind it?
No, people ask me that all the time.
Right?
I'm just like I said before, my expertise is that I'm a regular guy. Let me tell you like where it started or like where I got involved.
Sure.
So this amazing guy who wants to remain anonymous, and that's why he's so special. He's not looking for accolades. He just wants to help other people and wants to upgrade our lives and make us live more meaningful lives. And that's really special and altruistic. He decided that he wants to invest. Invest in this particular area of Shmir Sainaim, of helping regular folks, not people who are steeped in all kinds of things that we should never even get to those points, but just gain some control, like we said before. And he started putting out videos and he invested serious resources into those videos. Professional videographers, great sound. He pays video editors to put in all kinds of, motions and stills and music. And his product is pretty amazing. It's pretty cool. It's very high level and it's very professional. He's very careful what he puts out. So he had started to do a few of them and then he randomly reached out to me. I never heard his name before. And he's like, I've seen some of your content out there. I think maybe you're the right kind of guy for this. Could you come and do like a bunch of shorts, like short video clips? And I said, sure, like, okay. And I remember it was like tonight, it was pouring. And I went to it was either Jackson or Tom's River. Like it just kind of like from Lawrence to Woodmere or something like that. And I went to like one of these basement shuls over there. It was Matzah Shabbos. It was Saturday night and it was my umbrella. And he's got like this whole nice setup with the lights, like kind of like what you have, but like with the lights and the darker lights. And he's got a cameraman there and everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just sign up for? I just want to share some stuff that's meaningful.
You thought the guy's like with an iPhone coming out.
Right. And he's standing there on the side. I'd never met him before. I'm just like, which is the guy I've been communicating with? He tells me his name, give me a little hug. And then I sit down and I just turned to Hashem, to the Almighty, and I said, let the right thoughts and the articulate way let them come out, because I think this is a really good initiative. And I think it can make a big difference. And it was like in infancy at that point. And I remember he's standing there on the side, and every time that I said a really amazing story or a great thought, he was like jumping for joy. He's like, oh, this is perfect. This is what people need to hear, et cetera, et cetera. And then literally within 3-4 weeks, maybe a month or two, all of a sudden, like this little tiny initiative, which I think probably had a few hundred views a day, is all of a sudden everyone's talking about it and everyone's watching it, and it goes into the thousands and into the tens of thousands. I think the word for that is viral, although I don't think the guy who actually started knows what the word viral means, which is good. And all of a sudden, everywhere I'm going, people are talking about it. They're like, oh my gosh, I watched your clip and it totally changed my day that day. Or I was dealing with this particular struggle and this helped me kind of sort it through. And then so just to get back to what you're saying, it's this daily 2 to 3 minute video by really, really amazing world-class speakers, much, much better than myself.
No, you're great. You're great.
Just being honest with you. And they take what the fellow said and they edit it beautifully and they make you sound so good. Like I'm so excited every time he sends me a little clip of myself. I'm like, wow, I never sounded that good my whole life. And it started having a big impact.
Why do you think is having such a big impact?
I think first of all, it's something that in our heart of hearts, we all know we should be working on, but there were very few resources to deal with it. And the upside is tremendous emotionally, spiritually, personally. So when you put together the fact that we kind of know this is a good thing for us, that for some reason, at least in the circles that we're part of, no one was really talking about it in a real way. And all of a sudden, someone's just talking to us about the things that we struggle with all the time that we want to kind of, take to the next level, if you want to call it that. And then on top of that, every single video message that comes out each and every morning on the many different platforms is positive. It doesn't beat you up and say like, oh, if you look at things you shouldn't look at, who knows what's going to happen? You're going to get the down escalator. It's not that approach. The approach is very positive. It identifies with your struggles. It shares something inspirational, some beautiful insight. It pumps you up spiritually.
So give me a taste. Give me a taste of like a maybe a video that you saw, or a story, something. Someone's listening to like, okay, this idea is nice, but like, I wanna taste that.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you something. I didn't do a video about this. It's a first for Yaakov Langer.
Okay, cool.
And for everyone else. Literally 2 weeks ago, a successful businessman asked me to come into his office, and I'm going to cover a lot of the details here. Chas v'shalom, wouldn't want to expose anyone. And he says, I want to talk to you about something, of course. And the fellow says to me, and he's got tears in his eyes and, a lump in his throat. And he's like, I've been a very successful businessman for a very, very long time. And it's tough times. Listen, we know the interest rates. We know what's happening in many different markets. People are hurting. And he was hurting in a very, very big way. And perhaps the biggest impediment that he had to just be able to keep himself afloat was this very large project where there was a tremendous setback in that project. And by the laws of nature, there was no good solution. There was no good exit strategy. And one day, this guy travels to the wazoo. Some people have like 1K on United. This guy's got like 1,000K. When he gets on the plane, like the pilots come out. They're like, so honored to have you. Would you like to sit next to us in the cockpit? Like, one of those type of guys. And him and his wife were just having a conversation. And she's like, this Vayimaen thing, I've been watching it and you've been watching it a little bit. And I think it's time to we could use an upgrade in our life. I think we need to show Hashem that we're ready to do something a little bit more, to do something real, to upgrade our lives in a serious way. And he said that, he always watches like the movies on the plane and first class, and he goes to his nice hotel and he watches on his flat screens, all those different, and he says, I think that's where I'm going to start. Why do I have to watch? Because I'm on a plane. Why do I have to watch after a long day to unwind? And he tells me like he brings along some books and some svarim and reading material and snacks just so he should be well prepared. And he keeps his commitment. And 2 weeks in, he gets a call out of the clear blue from the single party that could have done anything for him, that they want to solve it. They want it to go away. And a series of impossibilities unfold, one after the next. I think it's fair. Again, I'm trying to like safeguard the person's anonymity, but I think it's fair.
Shlomo, of course. You gave out all the details. No, we have no clue what it is. Don't worry.
But I think it's fair to say that this type of solution happens once every century. And he got that solution. And it was only 2 weeks in to this upgrade. And like, I'm not a big believer of like, of hooji-woojis or stuff like that, holy waters and stuff like that. But there are enough stories of people that I've heard firsthand where they've had incredible, I know somebody who was really ill and the family got together and his illness disappeared. You can't make this stuff up. You can ask Sloan Kettering for his medical records. You will see his scans and then you will see his scans. And in many different ways. And in people's shalom bayis, which is kind of like, that's kind of intuitive. Their marriages were improved. A random guy stops me. Random guy, don't know his name, still don't know his name. And he says to me, oh, you're the guy from Vayimaen, this initiative. And I'm like, yeah, it's a merit to be a little part of it. And he says to me, I want to share with you something. He says, I'm not one of these guys who watches really inappropriate things, but I'm a looker. And this talked to me because I really knew in my heart of hearts that I should keep my eyes where they're supposed to be, and I should filter what I'm looking at in life. And I've been watching it every single morning for the last 3 or 4 weeks. He says, my davening has changed. I feel like I could talk to Hashem in a different way. He says, my focus in learning is totally different. He says, when I start off my morning and I watch my Vayimaen and I had a good shacharis, I davened and prayed properly in the morning, and I had an hour session where I was able to focus and not think about my phone and work and just and learn how to filter and be in control. I start off my whole day and my headspace is in a totally different place than it ever was before. So of course I'm going to be in the office. I'm going to kill it. He said, every area of my life that's important to me, slowly but surely is coming together. He says, this has been a life changer. It's been a total game changer. So there's the extreme stories, and then there's just like the stories of regular people like me and you, just doing regular things, but feeling a real substantial upgrade in their life.
That's really beautiful. We'll be right back this week's episode, and stick around because some of my favorite stories from this podcast is coming up. But first, let me tell you about this week's sponsor, Hamaspik. They have been in Brooklyn, as you know, for so many years, and they're here in the 5 towns. If you've been here, you've seen their office. Fun fact, I was actually walking by Central Avenue coming from a podcast a few years ago when they did the ribbon cutting, and I actually was there to be there for the ribbon cutting. Ashkacha Pratis, because full circle, now I'm talking about them on this podcast. So they're there for families and children with special needs. And anyone who has a child knows that being a parent is not easy. Kal v'chomer, surely if you have a child with special needs. And that's exactly where Hamaspik comes in. They help you, they guide you, and they have so many things to help the process of being a parent with a child with special needs easier and just more calm and helpful. So they have so many things. They have a big brother, big sister program. They have Shabbatons and Shabbosim and just so many events to help you. But more than that, they sit down with you. It's people local from the 5 towns who sit with, if you're watching this and you're from the 5 towns, they sit with you and they hold your hand. There's so many times where the government is giving you money if you have a child with special needs, but the process is difficult. It's hard. They help you through it. They get you through that process. And even if you're not officially in their program yet, they tell you, okay, come for the Shabbaton that we're having. There's so many people in the same boat as you, and we want you to connect and just have an easier time. They have the best staff, the best people working with your family to give you that break that you need. But more than that, they don't just give your children a fun time. They also teach them really valuable skills that will help them through society and just live a better and more happy life. So there's a few things that I want to say about them. So first off, you might be thinking, what ages do they service? So simple, they service ages 8 through 21, but even if it's younger than 8, still apply, check them out because you might still get accepted. And they are really an organization, but I call them a family because once you're in their Hamaspik family, you are loved, you are cared for, and they really want to help you and your family thrive. They actually have an event coming up on June 25th, which is great time because it's in between school and camp. They go above and beyond to think of like, okay, now especially is a time where that Sunday's a long day. No one's really doing anything. How could we help the families most in need? So if you are someone in the 5 towns that need their help, you could go ahead and give them a call at 516-875-8400, extension 255. That's 516-875-8400, extension 255. And if you want to email them, if you have whatever it is, reach out to them. You have a good chance of being eligible for their help, and they are eager to help you. So you send them an email at info@hamaspikkings.org. That's HAMASPIKKINGS.org. They are there to help your child with the skills that they need. They are there to hold your hand. They are there to connect you with a full community of people going through the challenges you are going through. They're a beautiful organization, and they're there to help. Now, back to this week's episode. I saw a Vayimaen clip with Rabbi Leaf, and he was saying 2 times that the word Vayimaen comes up in the Torah. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so
I watch it every day. I know every single thing.
Okay, so first, could you explain what the word Vayimaen means? And I guess why you think the person who named it, who's like Wizard of Oz, like the guy behind, like no one knows who he is. Everyone's going to beat me up. They'll be like, you should have asked more questions. I'm like, no, he doesn't want to be known who he is. So please don't kill me, everyone. But yeah, why was it named Vayimaen, and where's that presented in the Torah?
So if you look at like every single video starts with like a cute little like musical intro, and it has like a strange sign that looks kind of like this.
Yeah, is it like a trop or something?
It's a trop. It's one of the musical notes from when a person reads the Torah, and it's on the word Vayimaen. What is Vayimaen? So it's the story.
First of all, it's very hard to spell in English. I
know.
I was like, my Google search is like, dude, get your act together. I'm like, I don't know how to spell it in English. It's not an easy word to spell.
I know by now, but it took me some time as well.
Yeah, okay, fair.
Just every Hebrew word is impossible to spell.
Yes, that is
I write a lot also. So like, and I try to write Hebrew words, and like the editors, like they always change them on me. It's okay. It's fine. They know what people can read and what they can't.
Right.
So Vayimaen is a story in the Torah. It's a story of Yosef HaTzadik, who was sold into slavery by his own brothers, and probably one of the most desperate situations that a human being could be in, when everything that you thought was special to you and precious to you is gone. It's difficult and it's challenging, and he ends up living in the home of the wife of this fellow by the name of Potiphar, one of the ministers of the Pharaoh, and the fellow has a very attractive wife. And Yosef was very handsome. We know that Torah teaches us that he was a very handsome guy, and she's constantly trying to seduce him. But the opportunity really never presents itself in a very, very real way. But then one day, everyone is gone. It seems like it was the king's birthday. It was like Mardi Gras or something like that. And just her and Joseph, who's the servant, so he doesn't get to go home. And she propositions him, and he really is going to capitulate. What happens in Egypt stays in Egypt. And somehow he finds the inner strength not to be seduced. And he runs out of the home, and she grabs his jacket, which later she uses as evidence that he tried to seduce her, and he gets thrown into jail. But the word Vayimaen means, and he refused. When we read that word, with the musical notes of the Torah, we elongate that word. Like, I'll do it. I'll go out on a limb here. Vayimaen. It's the longest word probably in the Torah, lengthwise. And it shows that he vacillated. If you look at that thing, it's like back and forth. Should I? And ultimately he's victorious. And he earns the title for eternity as Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef, the righteous person. A righteous person is someone that has self-control. And what Rabbi Leaf pointed out, and some others, is that we do find this word in another place, in a totally different context, but it's so beautifully related. When Joseph is sold into captivity, and he disappears, his brothers tell his father that he was killed. He was an animal, attacked him, and they bring back his bloody coat, the technicolor coat, or whatever it is. And it says, Vayimaen aviv hisnachem. Yaakov refused to be comforted. And the commentaries all point out that he refused to believe that Yosef was dead, and he also refused to believe that even if Yosef was alive, that he was dead. And it was a certain confidence from a distance, almost like a subconscious confidence that he had in the future and the eternity of his son, that somehow on some level was able to help his son in the most challenging of times. And as a parent, this is an incredibly inspiring thing. Listen, we have children, and our children are our everything. They really are. But our children struggle, and they have their ups and their downs and their peaks and their valleys. And if we refuse to ever give up on them, even if they're struggling and they're in a bad place, that gives them incredible strength to make the right decisions, to refuse, negative behaviors. And ultimately, they'll be okay. And hopefully they too will go down as tzaddikim, as people who are righteous and eternal. So it's a beautiful sentiment when you think about what Vayimaen is. It's earning yourself a title like Yosef, and it's kind of creating your eternity. And that's very powerful and very strong.
So that's very beautiful. Practically, could you describe, I guess, what it's like? And I think everyone has some form of taste of what I'm about to describe, but this idea of holding oneself back and just from letting loose. I mean, today's day and age, it's all about just enjoying. And I think maybe sometimes people misunderstand. I don't know, people understand. I was worried before I started this, people misunderstand. I say living l'chaim, like, enjoy, like free for all. Thank God no one's really actually said anything. But the whole point of living l'chaim is to ultimately give conversations over to help people live a happier life. So I definitely understand it, but someone who's like, no, come on, this is contradicting what I've been told. Like, enjoy
eye candy. Have you heard of
eye candy? Look, it's naturally enjoyable to look at things that are enjoyable naturally. Like, holding back is going to cause me harm. Like, it's going to hurt me. Why would I want to do that?
It's a fantastic question. And I think that we sometimes take for granted, maybe it's because of our Jewish education or our, philosophy of understanding. To us, like, what do you mean it's a slam dunk? But I've had this question posed to me many different times. One of the things that I talk to my students about a lot, particularly my teenagers, is that there's a lot of different levels of pleasure in life. There's very base level types of pleasures, and then there's higher level pleasures. I always use I'm not going to say the whole story because we don't have the whole night, but I always use like this analogy of a teenage girl whose mom incentivizes her to clean the basement. And she says, if you clean the basement, I'm going to buy you like a $12 Frappa-Lappadappuccino with 1,600 calories, 16,000 calories, whatever.
1,600, no, that's a win. That's actually really going to clean well.
And she does it. And she's all excited, and she takes the $12 to go to buy the Frappa-Lappuccino. And as she's about to put her hands on the 2 Ds from the Dunkin' Donuts or the BR of the Baskin Robbins or whatever it is, all of a sudden she hears a conversation. And it's a young girl, like a 6 or 7-year-old girl, and she's saying, Mom, can we get some ice cream? And the mom gives like a big sigh, and she's like, honey, I would love to buy you ice cream, but ever since Daddy left us, life has been so difficult, and we need to use the money to just buy like food and clothing. There's no money for ice cream. And the little girl's like, but I haven't had ice cream in like a whole year. And all of a sudden the girl hears this, our super amazing basement cleaner, Frappa-Lappuccino lady. And she turns to the mom and daughter and she goes, can you guys just hold it there just for 1 second? She turns to the girl, what's your favorite ice cream? She goes, I love vanilla ice cream with a lot of sprinkles. And she turns to the mom and she's like, mint chocolate chip because you're an adult. Yes, mint chocolate chip because you're an adult. And she runs into the store and she slaps down the $12 on the counter and she says to the person behind the counter, it's an emergency. I need a vanilla with sprinkles and a very large mint chocolate chip. And she runs out 90 seconds later and she gives the ice cream cone to the little girl and to her mother. And the mom's got like tears in her eyes. And the little girl looks at her and says, Mommy, is she God? She's like, no, just one of his kids. And she walks home and she didn't have her Frappa-Lappuccino. If you think about it for a moment, I always ask my teenagers, where's there more pleasure? Eating that Frappa-Lappuccino, all 1,600 calories, and you're Jewish, so you're lactose intolerant anyways. So before you walk out, you're already regretting it. Or the feeling that when you come home and mom says to you, how was a Frappa-Lappuccino? You're like, Mom, I had something so much better than that. And that Frappa-Lappuccino, the moment you leave, when you go to reserve a cut or whatever it is, the moment you leave, the steak does nothing for you. But this girl could go on the bus the next day, the next week. She could be a mom and tell her child this story, and it'll continue to give her pleasure. So eye candy is the most base level pleasure. And yeah, there is a certain level of pleasure. And if you want to live your life, on the baseline, and you're not striving for something higher and something more meaningful and more real, then that's a decision you're going to make. But Judaism pushes us to not be satisfied with being mediocre. You have to strive for greatness. Yosef is called a tzaddik. Tzaddik is a great person. And when we train ourselves not to take the baseline pleasure, but to kind of cash in on larger pleasures, whether it's enhanced marriage because our wife becomes more special to us, or whether it's just being able to focus on the things in life that are important to us as opposed to other people's lives, we live life on a much higher plane. And when we do that, we're immeasurably impacted and we're way happier. So you could choose if you want amazing pleasure or if you just want pleasure.
That's a good point. I remember when I was single, I thought of this, and I never heard of it, but I think this is a good Torah. Hopefully it's not kfira. But sure. You're reminding me of it. But the same way how when you're like working out and you're building your muscles because like you want to turn into whatever, a stronger, healthier person, so too, I was thinking this when I was single, and obviously it continues when someone's married, the same way how you want your wife to be the most special person to you, or whatever, someone's wife, they want their husband to be the most special person to them, you could start working on that muscle of like just connecting to the person you're going to fall in love with and get married to, you could start working that before. And even when you are married, obviously, especially, you could always be working on that muscle to be like, the way we believe that Hashem made, someone for you, your zivig, your special partner. And no matter where you're always able to work on that connection that you have, no matter where you are. So like, it's also like a little of a shift of like, yes, there's obviously that mindset of like, this is for you, obviously, but there's also of like your relationship with the most, hopefully the most dear person to you. You could like really be working on that.
I was speaking to like a really successful guy not that long ago. And he said to me that like, he did this for his marriage. He really did this for his marriage. And he's seeing his marriage has become much, much stronger. Like you said, he's investing in the single most important human relationship that he will ever have in his life. What would we not do to have a great marriage? Or what would we not do if we had a spouse who was struggling to help them out? It's a great investment. It's, it's not the only reason, but it's certainly a great investment. And I want to add like just two tiny things here.
Sure.
Because
you could add two large things as well.
Because like often in conversation, people say, is this like a guy thing? Like is Vayimaen a guy thing? And the answer, is it a Jewish thing? And the answer is, well, yeah, it's made by Jewish guys. And probably the majority of consumers are Jewish guys. But like, I think like just last week, a young lady in 9th grade left a message on the Vayimaen hotline. And she's like, I've been watching the videos. They've given me tremendous chizuk and they've given me a burst of inspiration. And me and my cousin decided that we're going off of YouTube. Sorry.
We have a hotline for people to call up. There's kosher ways to
And we're going off of Instagram, which they probably shouldn't have been in the first place, but I'm not here to tell people what to do. And we just want to take things up a few notches and we want to make our life more wholesome. And they did it as a merit for another person. A lot of people are doing that. Sometimes when you can't do something for yourself, but if you're doing it for someone else, you can find it within your recesses of your soul, which is actually a beautiful thing. And they did it. And they did this for, an aunt of theirs who was really trying to find Mr. Right and had been looking high and low, just hadn't found. Literally within weeks after they started, she met the right guy. And like they say, the rest is history. So what you look at applies to every single person. And if you're not Jewish, don't we always want to be in control? Isn't this a great first step towards self-control? Like I said before, don't we all want higher level pleasures? I think any human being could understand that we all want purpose and we all want meaning. You have to be Jewish to appreciate that. So it's like a universal thing. And I think anyone could benefit from working and investing in this particular, in this very, very important piece of our lives.
It's really beautiful. Okay, so someone who wants to get help and encouragement to be better, to do better, how could they sign up for Vayimaen?
So there's a website.
Okay.
You can ask me to spell it now.
I was about to ask you to spell it. We could put it on the screen and put it in the show notes.
Can we put it on the screen?
We'll put it on the screen.
I think I can spell it anyways, but
try. You know what?
I don't know if it's .com or .org or Vayimaen. Vayimaen.
Okay. Because we have like sometimes 600 people calling a day to listen to this.
Wow.
Predominantly in Lakewood.
Okay.
So it's good that you spelled it so they could find it. Well, if they're listening, they probably don't have okay, whatever.
Don't think too deeply here.
Yeah.
And so every single day they send out like a 3-minute clip and it's so well edited. He invests so much time and effort.
It's done really, really well.
And it's pleasing and I watch it and it doesn't make a difference to me who the person is. I mean, I'm a little bit of I think I'm a connoisseur and I like certain ones better than others or just certain things that certain people say relate to me in a better way, which I think is so beautiful because he has such a diverse group of people all coming at it from different perspectives. Like I'm really nervous. He's just going to run out of content, but he's not. And you can just get that daily video. It'll, if you start your day off that way, it empowers the rest of your day. If you want to binge, then you could literally go to the website and they have every single video that he's created in like 6 months. So you could just do a Vayimaen party and just binge from beginning to end.
I think it's a start. I personally think that the way it's done, like this format, it could be done for so many other ways to improve someone as a person. But the need for just working on what we're looking at and self-control, it's always been sort of taboo. I'm not exactly sure why. Like maybe because whatever. I don't even know why. Why has it been a little taboo?
I think because people didn't have the right tools to deal with it. And as a person, let's say as an educator, if I don't have control over something or I don't have the right way to approach it, I'm going to shy away from talking about it or teaching it because what am I going to gain? The only thing I could gain is maybe empathy that we're all struggling with this. But this is giving people real tools, and it's giving them real chizuk. I'll share with you something fascinating. The vast majority of videos that I put up for Vayimaen were sensational, amazing stories of people who start being careful with this and their lives were saved, changed, upgraded. But like last week, I think it was, they put out like a 2-minute video where I just basically said, listen, I've been doing this for like 6 months. And I think to myself sometimes, I don't think there's an end. I don't think until you die, this is going to be a struggle and a challenge. And when you look at it that way, it's like, forget it, I'll never be successful. But if you wake up in the morning and you say, today, this morning, this trip, this business convention, I'm going to be more careful. That's the way that you really build muscle. And that's how you have to look at it. Today I'm going to do. This week I'm going to do it for myself, for someone else, for my family. And that's the only real way to make things successful. I don't know if I shared this with you or if you saw this, but I said it on one of the videos and it's such a beautiful thought that, in Hebrew, there's 2 words that have exactly the same letters and they mean the exact opposite things. There's the word eineg, ayin, nun gimel, which means delight when you're killing it in life and just like, you want to wake up the morning. And then there's nega, nun gimel ayin, which is plague. It's when everything is going wrong. It's so weird that they have the same letters, but there's one pivotal difference between them. The word eineg, which is the life we crave for, has the ayin in the beginning of the word. When you put what you look at first and foremost, ultimately you have tremendous pleasure and delight. But a person who says, yeah, whatever, everything, I got to work on everything else first. I can't do it. So my ayin will be like a neg. It'll be at the end. That person, what does he have to deal with? What does he have to look forward to? And when I saw that, it's actually brought down from the Bas Ayin. Could you believe that? That's so cool. But the point here is that if you put it first and foremost, it's something that's there in the beginning of your day. It's something you think about. It's something that's a priority. It has tremendous dividends.
Really beautiful. Right before we finish, could you just finish off with a story? It could be a grand story. It could be a personal story, but something that someone could walk away with like, I got that story.
Okay. What a challenge. So recently I shared a story of a particular fellow who lives in Israel. He's a big Talmid Chacham. He's a Torah scholar, and he actually travels to Europe to teach in different places. And this guy has the strangest, pet peeve, if you want to call it. He always asks his travel agent to book him his flights to Europe on the economy airlines. He wants old planes, which is really strange. And one time the travel agent said to him, listen, I'll do what you want, but why do you want to fly, I don't know, Air Schlepper? What's up with that? And he says, simple. There's no screens on those planes. And I'm traveling to teach Torah and I'm traveling back to my family. I don't want to have that challenge, that nisayon of having to watch things. And even if I'm not going to put on my screen, which I don't think he would, it doesn't behoove him.
Naturally looks at the other ones.
But there's 2 people.
There's got to be a word for it. No, it's so easy to space out on a plane and then you're just watching some other show with you can't hear anything.
With the subtitles so you can really understand it.
And you're like, why am I don't want to be looking at this. Okay,
it's called peripheral vision. And he doesn't want that. So he just asks his travel. One time his travel agent's like, I'm sorry. I tried really, really hard. The only flight back before Shabbos is on, 5-star airlines where each seat has a plasma TV. He's like, no. So he buys himself earplugs, and he buys, those eye things that you could get to sleep, and he brings svarim and snacks because he wants to make sure that he's a person on a very high level. I don't know that we would all be on that level, but to each person where they're at. And he gets on the plane and he sees the screens are everywhere. There's 1.2 million people in the air at any given time. He sits down and he has the middle seat between 2 guys. And the guy on his right tries to turn on the screen. Doesn't turn on. Guy to the left tries to turn on the screen. It doesn't turn on. And they call the flight attendant. And she pushes and she goes, I don't know what's wrong. Every other screen on this entire plane works. And these 2 screens are not working tonight. And he was screen-free for the rest of the flight. And when I read the story, I read it in some Israeli publication. I'm like, yeah, could be it happened. And I was just in Spain 2 weeks ago. And I was flying back. And it was a very nice airline. The Spanish airline happens to have really nice planes. At least the ones they fly to the United States. I don't know where anywhere else. And I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about this story. I think about it every time I go on an airplane now. And I'm thinking about, like, I'm not turning my screen on, but there's going to be someone sitting next to me. Yaakov, not one person in my peripheral vision turned on a screen for the entire flight. Okay, granted, a bunch of them were students that had been with me on a trip and they probably couldn't move because they hadn't slept in a week. But there were people that were not, and no one turned on a screen. And I remember by the end of the flight saying, like, you can't make this. I should just video this so everyone in the world could believe me that the same way those stories are true, this story is true as well. And maybe it was like Hashem just giving me like a little tap on the shoulder, and he's like, I got you. I got you. You're trying, and it's not easy, and you're not always successful, but like, you don't have to be this great, huge tzaddik or this incredibly righteous person for Hashem to shut 2 out of 1.2 million screens. You could be a regular guy, just like me. And if you're working on it, I'm going to try to help you and make sure that things come together. So that, I don't know if this is like the sensational story you're looking for, but it's
No, I was looking for a story, but it's so funny because, you know what, I was just thinking the other day, I'm going to humble brag, but, people could listen to this on 24/6, and I'm sure a lot of people are. It's a great app. And one of the things, I know the person who did it, and one of the things that we did is 24/6 is on LL. So you could listen to Jewish music. And he approached me and said, Baruch Hashem, he loves the Living L'Chaim podcast, and he wants to take a bunch of episodes and make a separate 24/6/Living L'Chaim channel. And I'm like, no one's paying Living L'Chaim here, and we're putting it out, and I do not have the data. Like, I have no clue how many people are actually, I'm sure it's halal, it's a big schus, but at the same time, like, we've been doing it for a while, and I'm like, is it really going anywhere? Like, I don't, like, here and there, someone sends me a screenshot of like a picture, like, oh, I saw it, but now you're like telling me this, and I'm like, okay, you know what? For that person who's not on the level to say they're not going to watch, or like, Hashem's gonna make all the screens not work, like, at least, I could feel good that I'm helping provide someone to sit down and say, I'm not gonna watch something that's bad for me, but hopefully something that could help me connect, help me, learn about Judaism, learn about my, work on myself. And
maybe they could watch this episode.
Maybe.
On LL.
Maybe.
That would be like a match made in heaven.
Yes.
Get it?
Yes. That's very funny. Rabbi Landau, thank you so much.
Thank you, Yaakov. This has been such a merit, and thank you so much for literally changing the face of Klal Yisrael.
Well, I'm not the Vayimaen guy.
One episode at a time. I think you're talking about topics that people want to hear, and they're able to relate, to their own lives. And it's important. It's a world where there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of darkness, and people like you, and just generally people are trying to bring light and upgrade other people's lives, are really making a very big difference. Hashem should just give you continued hatzlacha and success, and you should take things from 150,000 to 250 to 550, and one day you and I will be like, remember when we said 250, 550, 5.5, etc. Thank you so much.
Amen. And I'm going to buy you a frappa d'Appalachino.
Oh, now I'm going to give it away to someone.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. If you got this far in YouTube, I want you to drop 3 letters in the comment section so I know that you've gotten this far. And people have been doing it, and the feedback has been incredible. But I want the word joy, Joy. Why? Because I really believe that if you try to follow in the ways of this conversation and, I guess, guard your eyes and just think about it a little more, even taking the small step of joining the Vayimaen WhatsApp group, which you'll have a link in the show notes. These videos are incredible. They do it so well. And ultimately, it's so easy to think that when you limit yourself, that you're going to have less fun, less enjoyment, less excitement in life, and nothing could be further from the truth. So I want you to drop the word joy. If you enjoyed this episode so much, go ahead and share this with your friends, your family, on your WhatsApp groups, on your Telegram groups, on your Nib-Nab groups. That's a new social media app that I just made up. It's not copyrighted, so if you want the rights to it, you could go ahead and have it. And go ahead and share this episode with people that will be impacted by it. Also, check out in our show notes the link for Hamaspik. So if you are in the 5 towns, or if you're in Brooklyn and you need their help, you want to get involved and use their incredible services, but honestly feels like more like a family. If you want to join their family, you can, and they want you to, and they want to help. So go ahead and get involved. Until next time, keep on being inspirational. L'chaim. Living L'chaim.